Hey everyone! Hi beginning comp students, Miss Ray here. So I wanted to walk you through how I approached annotating a student essay for the This I Believe assignment. So this is actually an example from one of my seniors last year. And so you'll notice as we go through that she makes a lot of really insightful decisions when it comes to the figurative language devices that she uses. So I want to go through and really break those apart and look at what she's doing and why she's doing it and how it works. So we're looking not only at the way that she's organized her essay, but also the choices that she's made when it comes to figurative language devices and also sentence structure, things like that. All right, so my first step when I annotate a piece is to just read it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just read it through one time. All right, here we go. It's called The Power of the Hair Tie. I will say it's important just from the get-go that we have an interesting title to kind of hook the reader in. Before we even get to the hook, the essay title hooks us in. So I'm interested in reading because I want to know more. What is the power of a hair tie? Interesting. All right. The days passed by slowly, and the children kept roaming absently alongside one another. As I walk into my first class, I can feel the tension creeping into the room, the silent scrutiny and confining condemnation clogging the air with their distinct aromas. Looking down at my assignment, I hear a loud cry for help. It is none other than the girl in my first period math class, Mickey. She looks around, hovering her seat as she pleads for anyone to give her a hair tie, the sound of her voice echoing across the room, and with many heads still, I looked down, seeing not one, not two, but 3 hair ties on my wrist. I was conflicted. She was known for her loud cackles, her Goliath-sized personality, and all of her owl-like mannerisms that begged the eyes of all. I wondered, though, would I be the one to cater to the silence? My heart fluttered, skipped, jumped, almost tried to run. But there was nowhere to hide, and now I was faced with the question. Should I ignore her habitual attempt to gain any sorts of attention, or should I judge the situation instead of the person, and just lend her a helping hand? I stood up confidently and gave her my hair tie. I smiled. She smiled, and at that moment skepticism had no bed in which it could rest its pretty little head. I believe in hair ties. Never before had I broke the barriers of phony high school animosity and made the conscious decision to be nice just because. I wasn't even that nice on a day-to-day basis, whether it be to others or myself. I allowed a dark cloud to follow me everywhere I went. Surprisingly, I began to be at the mercy of other people's negativity. Broken. Surprisingly, the malevolence that consumed those around me turned me into the target of the very venom I had spewed. What had I done to deserve this? Businessman and inspirational motivator Harvey Mackay explains that positive thinking is more than just a tagline. It changes the way we behave. And I firmly believe that when I am positive, it not only makes me better, but it also makes those around me better. I believe in hair ties. For the sake of growth, I had to sacrifice my own ego. I had to commence my relationship with empathy. I had to recognize hurt in its most intricate forms. I, not they, but I had to realize the importance of the hair tie, an unspoken symbol of understanding and connection, the elasticity and durability stemming solely from an urge to spread and wish love, positivity, and peace upon every single person. I had to stop subscribing to stigmas, stereotypes, assumptions, and judgments. I had to let go of the hurt and the pain. I had to let myself experience sanity again. I had walked the fine line between hatred and hope, but for the sake of my fellow humans, I hung on that rope. I believe in hair ties. All right, so the first thing I've done is just read the essay, and now I want to think, before I start breaking it apart, what's it really about? So obviously, the writer, in this case her name is Samantha, she doesn't just believe in hair ties, right? That would be confusing if one just believed in something you use to hold back your hair, but what is it really symbolizing? So I think back to her essay and I noticed that she talks about the fact that she's breaking through the barriers of animosity. She used to allow dark clouds to follow her. She has this girl in her class who asks for something. She admittedly is not a huge fan of this student, and she realizes that put all that aside, and what she needs to do is, as she puts it, commence her relationship with empathy and let go of the rest of it and pass off this item, which is used to hold something up, as a way to hold someone else up. So it's really metaphorical in nature when we look at this belief statement. When she says she believes in hair ties, it's truly that she believes in supporting another person, embracing empathy, and letting go of hatred and animosity in order to support another woman. All right. So now that I've kind of looked at what she did there, I'm going to break apart the piece itself. So I have my annotations on the margin here, so we're going to kind of go through them. So the first thing I notice is that her hook strategy is that she begins with an anecdote. She tells this story of everyone roaming along the hallways, her sitting down in class, and hearing this cry for help. So notice that she has really nice imagery throughout, but she's also opening with an anecdotal hook, a short story, and that's then going to extend to the greater meaning of the piece. So nice, effective hook. Here when she says the silent scrutiny and confining condemnation clogging the air, oh my gosh, beautiful alliteration. Wonderful alliteration. So that repetition of the consonant sounds at the beginning of successive words or phrases. It helps to build the tension in the setting. So when you read it out loud, and you should definitely, as you are drafting your this I believe statement, read your work out loud to yourself. You'll catch things and you'll see where maybe you could add a little bit more style. But when you read that out loud, it helps to build that tension. It helps to build that idea. It's really nice use of alliteration there. As we continue to work through this essay, and we're talking about the girl herself, it says she looks around, hovering her seat as she pleads for anyone to give her a hair tie, the sound of her voice echoing around the room, and with many heads still, I look down, seeing not one, not two, but 3 hair ties on my wrist. The sentence structure here is really effective. So notice how she begins with this phrase that describes the sound of her voice first. Instead of just saying, with many heads still, we hear the sound of her voice, we begin with the sound of her voice that echoes across the room. So it already puts the reader in that place, right? We can imagine what it's like to be listening to this girl yelling for a hair tie across the classroom, just as Samantha was. And then we have this nice use of fragments here. I looked down, seeing not one, period, not 2, period, but 3 hair ties on my wrist. It's a really nice use of intentional sentence fragments. This helps to build the style of the essay. So I know typically you're taught, don't have sentence fragments, don't have run-on sentences. But in this case, for the purpose of style, those fragments, not 1, not 2, but 3, helps again to give that building effect. So it's an intentional use of fragments. As long as you know the rules of grammar, you can absolutely break them for the purpose of style. So that's something to keep in mind. Then she gets into the body of her essay. I was conflicted. She was known for her loud cackles, her Goliath-sized personality, and her owl-like mannerisms that begged the eyes of all. So we have wonderful imagery as we're looking at the description of this girl. We know what she sounds like, right? We've maybe seen this person in class before. We can all kind of picture it. And then when we have this wonderful metaphor, the Goliath-sized personality, right? Her personality is Goliath. That's also a use of allusion. It's a biblical allusion, referencing back to the David and Goliath story of the Old Testament. So we have another reference, another figurative language device to look at. All right, I wondered though, would I be the one to cater to her silence? A wonderful hypothetical question, left unanswered, but it does promise the reader that we will find out. Right? So it's guiding the reader. It's not a hypothetical question for just the sake of hypothetical questions. Have you ever thought about supporting another person? That's not an effective hypothetical question. Here, though, it's stylistically used in a way that's going to promise the reader that we will find out the answer. It's leaving us a little bit on edge there. So nice and effective. All right, my heart fluttered, skipped, jumped, almost tried to run. Again, those short fragments that just build and build and build. Really intentional use of fragments. It affects the pacing of the essay. It helps it to move forward. It drives it, causes it to speed up a little bit. We also have personification here. The heart is being given human qualities. It flutters, it skips, it jumps, it tries to run. Your heart cannot physically run, right? So again, nice personification. And we as the reader know what that feels like if we've ever had a moment of anxiety or doubt or not knowing what to do with a situation, that feeling of your heart trying to escape your chest. She's painting that for us in a really effective way. All right, but there was nowhere to hide, and now I was faced with a question. Should I ignore her habitual attempts to gain any sort of attention, or should I judge the situation instead of the person and just lend her a helping hand? Here we're getting into the meaning, right? Here we're getting into the theme of this piece of writing. What's it truly about? Do I judge the person, or do I judge the situation and do what I can? So this is the struggle that Samantha's writing about when it comes to her this I believe statement. And just such a little moment in her life that helped her to develop this idea of providing empathy, providing support without question or judgment. I stood up confidently and gave her my hair tie. I smiled. She smiled. And at that moment, skepticism had no bed in which it could rest its pretty little head. This is such a beautiful use of personification and metaphor here. She's giving power to skepticism as something that's a driving force for her, right? Skepticism, something that's existed in her life before and played a role in her life as a supporting character, no more. Doesn't have anywhere to rest its head. So we see those human qualities given to skepticism. Really effective. Then we get to her actual belief statement. I believe in hair ties. Notice that it's italicized, right? This is drawing attention to that statement. This is another interesting stylistic choice. It helps it stand out from everything else. It's not an obvious belief statement. It's not, I believe in supporting other people, or I believe in empathy, or I believe in judging situations, not people, right? Those are a little bit obvious. Instead, she's given us a metaphorical view of it. It's that she believes in hair ties, and that's what's representative of this whole belief statement. All right, never before had I broke the barriers of phony high school animosity and made the conscious decision to be nice just because. I wasn't even that nice on a day-to-day basis, whether it be to others or myself. I allowed a dark cloud to follow me everywhere I went. So notice how much I is used in this writing, right? It's her belief statement, so it's very personal. This is a time when it's completely appropriate, acceptable, and expected for you to put this in the first person. Because she uses I and not say we, it makes it personal and allows us to connect to her and to understand what she's been going through, and we learn through her experience. If she had said we, then it sounds really preachy, right? Never before should we break the barriers and make the conscious decision. We aren't even nice on a day-to-day basis, whether it be to others or yourself, right? When we take it out of the personal, it sounds like we're preaching. So it's really important that you keep it personal in these this I believe statements. Also here where she says she allowed a dark cloud to follow her everywhere she goes. You see this metaphor, again, it's kind of a constant in her day-to-day life and her current situation. We're understanding that typically, maybe Samantha, not so sunny and cheery and willing to help others with small gestures, but this was a moment that she was able to reflect and choose a different outcome. Surprisingly, I began to be at the mercy of other people's negativity. Broken. Just a one-word fragment, so effective. Surprisingly, the malevolence that consumed those around me turned me into the target of the very venom I had spewed. Notice that she repeats surprisingly twice, right? That nice use of anaphora there, the repetition of the same word or the phrase in consecutive sentences, helps again to build the essay, to build the style, to allow us to connect with her. Also, this word choice here, the malevolence that consumed those around me. It's not the negativity, it's not the pettiness, it's the malevolence, right? That evil that consumes those around me. So word choice is really important. You want to be sure with an essay this short that you are choosing the most powerful and most impactful words to get your message across. So that's a really nice word choice there, malevolence. Then when she gets into the very venom that she spewed, again, we have another metaphor here. She's painting a picture for the reader. She's recalling the snake-like teenage years, that poison of negativity that so often exists in female relationships, right? We hear that cliche of like the mean girls, right? So she's getting beyond that and saying, no, that venom that she had spewed in the past, she's going to get beyond that. So it kind of alludes to this high school experience that many have. And so she's pointing that out and talking about how she's going to flip it by making a different choice. So again, it's all connecting back to that belief statement. What had I done to deserve this? Right? We have another rhetorical question. It's keeping the audience engaged. It's an effective rhetorical question. And we understand that she's going to then address it. And the way that she addresses it in her essay is with a quote that reinforces the message. One thing, if you are going to put a quote in your belief statement, it has to connect to the overarching idea, the overarching belief. It's not enough to just look up famous quotes about support and then pick one, right? It has to be something that you truly connect with. So positive thinking is more than just a tagline. It changes the way we behave. And I firmly believe that when I'm positive, it only makes me better, but also makes those around me better. So it's connecting to Samantha's story, where not only was she able to support someone else with her positivity, but she, as a result, is growing as a human. Her empathy is expanding. She's getting more understanding for this girl. So the quote is well selected in a way that it's going to help to support the essay instead of just being kind of plunked in there as an afterthought. And then we have this repetition for the second of 3 times of the belief statement. She's bringing it back to that metaphor of the hair tie, bringing us back because we've been in this exploration of her own mind for a while, of her thought process and what she's going through in this one snap instant of a girl saying, hey, does anyone have a hair tie? She's bringing it then back to that belief statement and back to the metaphor really effectively. As she continues through, you're going to notice how it closes and how it all kind of ties together. So for the sake of growth, I had to sacrifice my own ego. I had to commence my relationship with empathy. Another wonderful phrase that she has here. Again, we see that personification of empathy itself. We can build a relationship with empathy, right? Really nice. And again, notice the I. Not we have to sacrifice ego, not we have to build our relationships with empathy. We have to recognize hurt. That's not nearly as effective as learning a lesson through her personal story, which is why that first person narrative is so important when it comes to this essay. I had to recognize hurt in its most intricate forms. I, not they, but I. I had to recognize the importance of the hair tie, an unspoken symbol of understanding and connection. So she's really tying it all together for us. We have the beautiful use of the em dash, which gives us some variety in punctuation. Really nice syntax choices, right? She has the I, period. Boom. Simple fragmented sentence. Not they, but I. Emphasizing it even further, and then what it is that she had to do. I had to recognize that importance of the hair tie. And then the em dash that's then leading us to exactly what that importance is. The elasticity and durability stemming solely from an urge to spread and wish love, positivity, and peace upon every single person. So this is a stylistic explanation of precisely what the metaphor is, right? The elasticity and the durability, not just of the hair tie, but of the understanding and of the connection. And that elasticity, that willingness to be flexible and to change, and the durability, that constantness, is allowing her to spread love, positivity, and peace upon the others who she comes in contact with. So it's giving us an explanation of the metaphor without saying, what I mean is, right? We're getting a nice stylized explanation there. Then we get into the closing of the essay. I had to stop subscribing to stigmas, stereotypes, assumptions, and judgments. I had to let go of the hurt and the pain. I had to let myself experience sanity again. I had walked a fine line between hatred and hope, but for the sake of my fellow humans, I hung up that rope. So this repetition of the I had to stop subscribing. I had to let go. I had to let myself. I had walked, right? We have really effective anaphora here. It's driving that point home. It's enhancing the message and really bringing the reader to that moment, right? When we hear those repeated phrases, it stands out to us as readers. And it, again, helps to build the momentum in the essay. Notice that this essay does not drag, right? It continues to build upon itself, which is really effective. And then she ends for a third time with her belief statement, I believe in hair ties. Ending with it brings it full circle as it's woven throughout that essay. It's not enough to just say it in the beginning and say it in the end and call it a day. She's woven it throughout, and she's made sure that through the use of this extended metaphor, she's really driving home what it is that she's talking about and what it is that she believes in. So as you look through student samples and as you're drafting your own essay, be sure to go through and point out, okay, well, what is the writer doing, or what am I doing, and what's the impact that that is having on the reader? Is this an effective use of figurative language devices? Am I effectively getting my message to the reader in a way that's not too cliched or too obvious or preachy? And do I have really nice varied syntax throughout and solid word choice? Are the words that I'm choosing the most effective to drive my message home and leave the reader with some kind of a impacted message? You want to leave them with a memorable picture in their minds. So I feel like this essay that Samantha wrote last year does a really nice job of that.